For this video, I'll be comparing the Fujifilm X100S and the Fujifilm X100V. This isn't going to be an exact comparison, but I wanted to make a video comparing the two cameras based on how I use them. For the X100S, as many of you know, I use the Film Simulation Pro Nag High, and then I have a preset in Lightroom that I use to edit my photos. And for the X100V, I'll be using various film simulations depending on the lighting conditions. I wanted to do a video and compare these two because I wanted to see exactly what they would look like side by side based on how I've been using the cameras. And I also thought it would be a good comparison to just be able to see different types of things while I'm out shooting, such as the autofocus and different things like that. So in these first set of images, I kind of like both of them for different reasons. I like the X100S because it's got a lot of vibrant colors and the shadows are lifted quite a bit, which I have in my preset. And then the one on the right is a lot more cinematic and more moody and looks a little bit more closely to what I actually saw in real life. It's a lot more clear, and yeah, I mean, I like both of these for different reasons, and I mean, I let you guys decide down in the comments which you like more, but you know, I'm kind of 50-50 on these. So this is the first time I'm actually looking at these side by side. I didn't do this previously. I wanted to wait until I actually filmed to be able to see exactly what these are going to look like. And the best part about this entire thing is I can use the exact same settings that I used on the X100S on the X100V and continue using my preset. So when I'm looking at these, they're two totally different photos for different reasons. And I shot this with the X100V, and that's, you know, how I wanted it to look straight out of camera. With the X100S using Pro Nag High, I don't really know what to expect because I end up throwing my preset on it anyways. And it's just really interesting to kind of see these side by side. So when I look at these next images, I definitely notice that there's some pretty dramatic differences. The X100S looks like it's a little bit too pink, but I do like how much the shadows were raised. And with the X100V, I like all of the colors because they're a lot more true to life, but I do want to brighten this up a little bit. So I did mention in my last video that I wanted to shoot most of my photos straight out of camera, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back into Lightroom and make adjustments if it's going to make my image better. So I think for me personally, I would probably go into Lightroom, raise the shadows slightly, and maybe warm it up a little bit. And that's probably about all I would do with the X100V. In these next two images, there's pretty dramatic difference. And I think that has a lot to do with my preset. The way that I kind of did the colors, it was primarily for the skin tones, and these almost look a little bit too fake. I do kind of like them in a way. It gives it a very specific style, but I think that the X100V is a little bit more closely to real life. I think one thing that I would do with the X100V is possibly add a little bit more grain to that. I think it would just give it a little bit more of that cinematic mood to it. But yeah, it's super interesting to look at these both side by side. This next set was what I was most excited about, and it's by far the most interesting to me. So with the X100S, I really like how saturated it is. I like how the shadows are raised slightly. You get a little bit more detail that way. But with the X100V, it's so much clearer and just looks really, really clean. It's, you know, I like each of them for different reasons. And the best part about this is I'll be able to go back with the X100V, and I already have a custom setting for my X100S settings with the Pro Nag High and whatever else my settings were, so that I can continue using this exact same preset, and then just kind of making a decision based on the photo and the lighting and all those different types of things based on which film simulation I want to use. So it's nice to have the ability to do things straight out of camera, but also nice to have the ability to use the exact same stuff that I was with the X100S, but still use the same preset. In these next images, you can definitely tell the Pro Mist filter. I didn't use the Pro Mist filter on the X100S. I only have one, and I didn't really think that it would make that dramatic of a difference, but in this image, it definitely did, and you can tell pretty dramatically how much that light kind of glows. I really, really like this image. And yeah, I think that the X100V image is a lot better. I just like how much more warm it is and just looks really, really clear. In these next two, again, it's still kind of the same thing. The X100S, my preset it doesn't do as well with a lot of color. Kind of makes things look a little bit too fake in my opinion, brightens them up a little bit too much. And that's something that I could easily, adjust in the saturation and whatnot. But, again, I said I was just doing these really quickly because I had a ton of images that I went through and edited, and just it reminded myself how much I don't want to edit photos. And I love how the X100V image looks. All of the colors are very true to life. It's very warm and it just looks really, really good. And then in the last two images, it's pretty dramatic how different they are. I really like both of them for different reasons. And again, I'm just gonna keep saying it, but this is why I bought the X100V to begin with, is because I was gonna get more megapixels, sharper image, and I would still have the ability to make a photo like the X100S photo, but looking a lot clearer with the X100V. So now I wanted to talk a little bit about the shooting experience with both of these cameras. And the biggest thing by far, I think, was autofocus actually. And I mentioned in my X100S video that the autofocus was the number one con about the X100S, but it definitely continues. I noticed in several different photos where the X100S was missing focus, but the X100V wasn't. And it was pretty consistent throughout each day that I shot that the X100S would just miss focus on random things, but the X100V, I don't ever think missed focus once. Another thing with the X100S, again, I don't really like the circle pad for anything, especially when you're trying to choose the point that you're selecting, because you have to press up and then you choose which autofocus point you want to go with. And then with the X100V, you have the joystick and it just works a lot more seamlessly than the circle pad does. And that was just a big thing that I noticed when I was trying to choose autofocus points, that the X100V was a lot faster to do that as well. But after really shooting with these cameras and looking at the images side by side and seeing what I was able to get, both edited and unedited, and then zooming in and pixel peeping and whatever else I want to do, there really isn't as big of a difference as I expected there to be. If you're somebody that's kind of on a budget and you'd rather go with the X100S to try to get this entire experience, I definitely would not feel like you have to go with something like the X100V, especially if you're doing a lot of editing, wanting to shoot raw or anything like that. But if you want some of these newer film simulations, you want a little bit more tactile camera, I mean, it's a lot more refined than the X100S is. The X100S definitely seems very clunky to me after going up to the X100V, but there really isn't as big of a gap as I expected there to be. I know that this isn't as informative maybe as other people would want because this is very specifically for me, but I wanted to see what I was able to achieve in camera with the X100V, comparing that to my preset and seeing exactly what these images would look like side by side. I know that I could have gone with the ProNeg High film simulation and done that on the X100V and then shot and edited both the X100S and X100V images, but I wanted to use the X100V as I plan on using it and compare that to how the X100S and how I was using it. So that's why I ended up doing it this way. I know that it's not maybe something that everybody's gonna find as useful because it's not specifically for them, but this is how I wanted to do it. This is how it was gonna be as useful for me and my photography and learning how I was gonna be able to shoot a little bit better. So for next week's video, I will be sharing with you guys my custom JPEG settings so that you can try some of these out for yourselves. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment down below. But with all that being said, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.